Hello, guys. Let's talk Bitcoin. Let's talk fundamentals. Listen, an awful lot of us seem to forget. We forget what's happened in the past, since 2009 till now, in the past 10 years. You know, an amazing new invention. Nothing ever before like it. And when it first started, nobody knew about it. They were mining it. The inventors was mining it. Had I guess it was a little Pentium computer with a tiny little hard drive on it and a tiny little, back in those days, do you remember what those computers were like? They had like 100 megabit hard drive and a single core CPU and running at like 200 megahertz, and they used to make the tickety sound. It was mining bitcoins, and it was like mining one a second for like a whole year, just tickety, and accumulating them. Now, whoever created Bitcoin, and I say whoever because we don't know who created it, we don't know why. But they knew, and they had that computer running for like a whole year. Now, think about it for a minute, guys. They mined like 1 million of them before they released them out there. When they first released them, they weren't worth nothing. And time was passing. That 10 years, the progression of time was passing. Days, months, Now, this secret entity that created Bitcoin is an absolute masterpiece. It is like an invention it's right up there. I would say it's right up there with the automobile, the invention of the automobile. It's right up there with the invention of the light bulb. It's going to actually change the way the world does business. It does away with we don't need third-party transactions anymore. And people can be their own bank. I was watching last night Bitcoin Ben. And he had a guest on. And they were talking about every year everybody should pull their coins off of the exchange to verify that those coins actually exist. If we were to do that with dollars in the system, the way they've created derivatives and layers upon money that doesn't exist. This is why actually none of it exists. In the fiat monetary system, all the money that's out there is all debt now at this point. And in fact, debt exceeds the actual money many times over. So if everybody wanted their money in the world, the money doesn't exist. Poof, gone. Somebody is actually rob the entire system of everything, the world of everything. Now, Bitcoin all of a sudden starts to exist as money parallel to this system. It's like matter and antimatter to the present monetary system. Going back to these guys whoever they were, that are the Satoshi, and personally my opinion is probably a group or a consortium, or maybe some department of the intelligence community, or I don't know who they are. But obviously they had a plan, and it's obvious to me that Bitcoin is absolutely ingenious as an invention, but nobody's claimed any credit for it. We've had a lot of fake Satoshis come on board and said, oh, I'm the Satoshi, I'm the big guy, I'm the guy that created it. No, this was created, and there's a purpose involved for it. You don't know what the purpose is really yet, because this whole thing has not really played itself out yet, I think that there's a genuine plan behind the Lightning Network and Bitcoin, and when I entered it, there was really 3 coins that were really like top dog coins when I entered into the Bitcoin thing. It was Litecoin was silver, Bitcoin was gold, and Feather coin was copper. You know? And a lot of these other coins that are out there now, like Cardano and IOTA and a lot of these other coins that are really popular now, they didn't exist. You know? And so, getting back to this original plan, whoever created this probably didn't really foresee these other coins actually coming along. And so, are they really inclusive in the original plans for this? And also, a second point I want to just think about for a minute, and you guys to think about for a minute, is if there is an original plan, how big and how high and just exactly where does it originate from and what is the actual purpose for this? You know, because if it keeps going the way it's going right now, with this, it's slowly growing as an alternative finance system to the regular finance system. You see, going back in history, there was always the power of the treasury. You know, and this is thousands of years old. This goes back to the time of kings, when they used to have a treasury room and it would be full of gold. The treasure, they call it a treasure. That's what it is, a treasury. U.S. Treasury is a hand-me-down from those ancient times when the king owned the treasury. And they don't want to give up that power. That's why Libra coin came along, threatened to take that power away, the power of the treasury. And they basically said no, because it was asking for permission. Can we have the power of the treasury? Here we are, we're a consortium of different companies and stuff, and we've all signed on board, and we're going to promote this coin, but we need to ask for permission from the government to do this. And the government's basically scratched their heads and says, do we really want to give you guys the power of the treasury? I don't think so. But you know, Bitcoin's come along, and it's basically taken it. But, big but, even though Bitcoin has that power, and it's running a parallel system to the regular financial system, it is kind of struggling right now, just like gold and silver struggling. And this is because within the regular financial system, there's two forces that are coming into play. One's deflation and the other one's inflation. And the way the whole system is structured, it is structured to deflate, and they have to keep inflating it. This is a cycle, and it follows what's called the credit cycle. There's a short-term and there's a long-term credit cycle. And in 1929, when we had the big stock market crash in 1929, we were going through the long-term credit cycle. Well, the long-term credit cycle happens like every 60 to 100 years or so, you know. And we're overdue for the long-term credit cycle. It hit. We had the long-term credit cycle hit in 2008. But what they did was they stopped it in its tracks with massive amounts of money injections into the system. Now what's happening is the long-term credit cycle's getting ready to pop, and the everything bubble's getting ready to pop again. As it starts to pop, they're going to do the same thing they did in 2008. They're going to prop the whole thing up, but this time it's going to take a heck of a lot more money. We have this situation running parallel to Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies, and gold and silver, you know. Now, which is going to take best advantage of this situation is another story in itself. But the conditions are right. It's just like if you're going to grow something, like say you're going to grow tomatoes, you know. If you want the best tomatoes, you got to create the right conditions. If you put them in soil that's dried out, little tomato plant, and you put them in the shade where they can't get any sun, and you don't give them enough water, and you don't give them any fertilizer, and you basically don't treat the plants right, the plants aren't going to grow and flourish. Cryptocurrencies is the same darn thing, you know. And the conditions that make cryptocurrency flourish with this deflation that's out there right now is kind of stifling gold and silver a little bit right now, and it's stifling cryptocurrencies. And you know, the same thing happened in 2008, except cryptocurrencies didn't exist yet. Gold and silver was out there, and gold and silver suffered. On the initial start of the deflationary cycle, gold and silver suffered, and that's what we're doing again. We're going through that same thing. And we could see gold and silver prices actually fall, but this time is worse. Corporations could start to fail very soon. We could see banks start to fail. We could see bank runs. And basically what is happening is the system is starting to deflate. But this goes against the mandate of everything that these central banks stand for. They won't allow it. And so, just like in 2008, when we saw the effect of deflation on gold and silver, what happened later when the central banks reacted to it? You remember? We saw silver go up to darn near $50, and we saw gold go up to darn near $2,000. That's what we saw happen. This time is a stronger, much greater. It's probably 10 times more powerful effect. So on this side of it, when we see the deflation, we could see a stronger effect to the downside than we saw in 2008 for gold and silver. And opposite of that, now we have cryptocurrencies. So we could see a massive, in gold and silver and cryptocurrencies, this could actually get worse, this malaise that we're in right now. So, I mean, you have to take that into consideration because this is the deflationary side of it. And, you know, even though the Fed has started to stimulate a little bit and they've lowered interest rates and also they're supporting the credit markets, they're still on the tight side. They say, okay, we're going to wait on lowering interest rates lower. And they probably might even try to get out of these programs of supporting the credit markets like the repo market or whatever. They might actually try to pull their horns back. That's when we might get a sudden uptick in massive deflation. We could very well, and we could see gold and silver prices actually suffer a little bit, and cryptocurrencies. But we have to take a look at the bigger picture, the longer term picture. Now that's what this talk I'm giving you guys is all about, the fundamentals of cryptocurrency. Being as it's a new invention, and it runs parallel to the regular financial system. Not only does it run parallel to the regular financial system, it's structured entirely different. It's like matter and antimatter. The regular financial system and all the fiat currencies are structured as inflation. They're inflationary. They inflate their value away. If you hold $1 next year, you're lucky if it's worth 98 cents. That's your lucky. It's probably actually going to be worth 90 cents. Whereas the cryptocurrencies is the exact opposite. You hold a Bitcoin this year, next year, on average, it's going to be worth more. And so you can only go so far with this effect before a transition actually starts to take place that's noticeable to the people. When it becomes noticeable to everybody out there, then they all really want to hop on board. Now, at this point, at this stage in the game, we're not there. But if this trend continues, we're moving in that direction toward that event horizon where a realization goes out amongst the people of Earth that it's basically over for the dollar, it's over for the fiat currencies, and they're going to want to look for alternative assets out of the dollar and out of the fiat currencies so that they can keep their savings in. When that dawning realization hits everyone, this is when we're going to see a transfer of wealth over from the regular fiat monetary system over into the cryptographic monetary system. And I think the guys that really created this and hoarded 1 million Bitcoins for themselves, you have to understand that they probably knew that this was going to happen way back when they created Bitcoin. Now, let's think about something else. That 1 million Bitcoins that they hoarded for themselves would represent at the bare minimum 5% of the entire world's wealth. 5% of everything. If Bitcoin finally obtains its ultimate objective which would be to become the world currency, and have all wealth transferred into it, out of the dollar and into it. How much wealth would that be to actually own 5% of everything on Earth? All the assets, all the cars, all the people, everything. How much wealth would that represent? You know? And actually it'd be more than 5%, because if it's a solid million Bitcoins, and how do we know that those guys that mined that first million haven't hoarded a second million back when they were really cheap? But back when the guy bought the pizza for 7,000 Bitcoins. How do we know that that consortium that didn't mine that million didn't go out and scavenge onto another million? They might have 2 million or even 3 million sitting in a wallet or several wallets someplace, in a cold storage or something, you know? We don't know for sure what's going on with this. And that could represent as much as 10 or 15% of the, if all the wealth transfers over into cryptocurrency, into Bitcoin specifically, that could represent an enormous amount of wealth, because it would represent everything in the world. When we get to the final end of this game, people won't be saying my house is worth $200,000. They'll be saying my house is worth 0.2 Bitcoin. You know, sort of a deal. And when we finally get to that point, you know, how much would, like, say they've hoarded say they mined a million, say they've hoarded 2 more million, say they got 3 million of them. How much wealth would that represent? We got to think about things like that. Take that into consideration. And so take a look at the Lightning Network. I have my suspicions about that, you know. Early on, you know, when they had all these debates going out there about how Bitcoin was unscalable and something, and they were looking for some sort of an alternative way, because Bitcoin only transfers 7 transactions a second, and they were worried that Bitcoin might not be scalable to the network and everything, and the price fell down a little bit, you know, and stuff, because I think the price fell considerable. I think it fell down to like $150 or something like that. Maybe that consortium that was mining them originally might have been scooping them up at $150 still. You know, and the thing is who put that rumor out there that Bitcoin wasn't scalable in the first place? We don't think about things like that. And that rumor might have made the Bitcoin price fall even lower. People get worried to sell them. I was one of the ones that got worried. So, I'm hearing it's not scalable and stuff, maybe the thing will just die, and I better have my $150 before it's not worth nothing. I'd rather have $150 and not have nothing. So, you know, think about this for a minute. Maybe we've been all scammed on this whole thing. They told us, oh, it's not scalable and everything, and then all of a sudden the Lightning Network comes along. And we get all these guys out there now saying, oh, the Lightning Network will never work and everything else. They're all saying that while the Lightning Network is functioning. And the Lightning Network is growing and having more nodes added to it all the time. What if these guys, or whatever, that's doing all of this behind the scenes, who originally mined all those Bitcoins to begin with, what if they knew from the very start what was going to happen before it happened? What if they already knew where this thing is going? And maybe they even had the Lightning Network ready to go before it was ever even an idea, or anybody out there even knew it was an idea. Because how convenient is it? You know, and do we really know the future of the Lightning Network? Maybe it'll become the payment channel for the world. Ultimately, in the end. Maybe there'll be billions of transactions a day going across the Lightning Network. You know? And it seems kind of weird to me, you know, the fact that, what's the 2 coins that run on the Lightning Network that really are the established 2 original coins, Bitcoin and Litecoin? And we go back to to the time when I first entered these coins, that was gold and silver. You know? And something else interesting that just fiddling through my mind is Jim Rickards. And, you know, I was listening to interviews by him, and he said that the CIA was involved in financial games, scenarios of what the Chinese might try to do against America and stuff, and he was on the defensive side of these games, trying to figure out how to make a defense against Chinese gold, you know? And he was talking about they ran these scenarios through their defense computers and stuff, you know, to find out just exactly how to defend America against a Chinese attack if China were to use their gold reserves. You know, China's got massive gold reserves. This has been a problem. Evidently, this was running through their minds in the CIA years and years ago. I think they called it Project Prophecy or something like that. You know, and he was talking about it. And he said how he was in on the program and everything, and how they were going to run these games. Well, think about it. Bitcoin is supposed to be the equivalent of internet gold. And we do know that the NSA created SHA-256, which is the underlying protocol that Bitcoin runs on. That's like the tracks. You know, if they're going to put a train in front of your house, you know, or near your house, they're going to come in and put the tracks in first. You can't run a train until you have the tracks. Bitcoin being the train, SHA-256 being the track. It just seems logical to me that whoever puts the tracks in would probably have something to do with the actual train that runs on the tracks, which is Bitcoin. So, and then they were talking about how China was going to use gold as a weapon. Well, maybe an idea came, you know, well, let's make our own gold. How are we going to do that? We'll make internet gold. We make gold 2.0. And we can run it as a test on the internet. A beta test. Perhaps Bitcoin was just a beta test to be something greater later. I don't know. I'm just theorizing, guys. And perhaps a beta test got away on them. I mean, once you let the genie out of the box, you know, maybe a team of scientists put the thing together, and maybe they were absolute computer geniuses. Maybe that's who Satoshi is, you know. And so, I mean, I'm just theorizing, but maybe there's a long-term plan to all of this, ultimately, to nullify what the Chinese have been working at for ages now, accumulating all these 1 kilogram size gold bars. They got thousands and thousands and thousands of them. The Chinese, you know. Maybe this is a plan to thwart the Chinese at their own game by making gold 2.0, which would be more convenient in a way than gold. And ultimately, in the end, in this modern world we work in, ultimately in the end, because it imitates gold, it might actually become far more valuable than gold. And before you go laughing about that, I remember a time when they thought it was a major achievement that the Bitcoin price and the gold price were equal. I think gold was around 14 or 1500, and Bitcoin finally hit 1500, and they were like absolutely amazed and astounded that Bitcoin could actually be worth as much as gold. Well, right now, you know, a lot of people out there that own Bitcoin are a little bit dissatisfied. They're like, oh, the price is going to go up, and they're crying about it. Oh, but you know, it's many multiples now of the price of gold. And what's the upper limit to what Bitcoin can go to? What's the upper limit that gold can go to? We don't know. When you're weighing it against a fiat monetary system that is going digital and going digital fast, and is probably going to go through some sort of a hyperinflationary depression where they're just going to keep printing it until it's absolutely worthless. In the end, all these guys that try to put a price on gold, you know, in the end, ultimately, if you've got a gold coin and somebody offers you fiat currency that's absolutely worthless, how much would you sell him the gold coin for, especially if the value... See, I heard in Weimar, Germany during the hyperinflation, I heard that one guy, I heard this story off of Greg Hunter. I think I heard it off the Greg Hunter show. He said one guy went out that night and he bought himself a bottle of very expensive French wine. Now, I guess he drank it and he woke up the next morning, he had an empty bottle. And they buy bottles. And evidently, he sold the bottle, the empty bottle, for as much as a full bottle of expensive French wine it cost the night before. That's how quick the currency was going downhill in value. So if you've got a currency that's going downhill in value that fast, and you got the alternative, which is either Bitcoin or gold or silver, and it's going up in value that fast, how would you set a price for it in fiat? And so I know an awful lot of you guys out there are planning an escape out of Bitcoin or Litecoin or gold or silver. You've probably got your gold or silver, and you probably got your Bitcoin or Litecoin and everything. And you're probably thinking to yourself, someday I'm going to sell this. And you're thinking in your mind, dollars. I'm going to sell it for dollars. If you're a long-term hodler, you might never get that chance. Has that thought ever occurred to you that you might never be able to sell it for dollars? Because the dollar might ultimately come to its demise, and it might hyperinflate so fast at a certain point that you can't get out into dollars because you're not going to want to. And once all the value becomes transferred over into gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, which I see as the ultimate conclusion, I don't see any other way out of this, then you might never be able to transfer because all of the value of everything won't be set in dollars anymore. I mean, seriously, guys, this is really hard to get your head around because we've been so long under a dollar-denominated system that you can't actually get your head around this. And so hearing me talk about it and hearing me explain to you guys how hard it is, it's for me to get my head around it. I know it must be really hard for you guys to get your head around this. That this whole system could actually melt down into a hyperinflation, and you might get locked into whatever these dollar alternatives, but you might be darn glad you do, because you might be able to actually use them to buy goods and services directly without transferring into dollars. Or if you do transfer into dollars, you might only have to transfer a very, very small amount to receive an absolutely unbelievable amount of dollars and then buy goods and services. But, at the transfer point, like that second you transfer, like say you want some dollars and say you sell a small gold coin, and say you get $5 million for it. You might want to run out really fast and spend those dollars, because by the next day, the purchasing power might be cut in half. This is actually where we're going with this, And it's hard to get your head around the logic of it. But there's one other thing I want to say before I go, is countries that went through these things before, other countries. And generally, they reach out to something of value. Like if you go to Venezuela or if you were to go to Zimbabwe or whatever, they generally use the dollar as something of value that they can actually reach out to use for purchases and use to purchase goods and services and so on, because their own currency is worth practically nothing. But in this case, this is a special circumstance, because if the dollar goes into a hyperinflation and all of the other currencies are pegged to the dollar, then what are we going to reach out to? What's the world going to reach out to use for commerce? Well, this ties hand in hand with what I was just talking about 5 minutes ago, when I said about how you might not be able to get out, but you might not want to. because you might be able to buy goods and services directly, because there might come a point where they don't take dollars. They only want Bitcoin or Litecoin, or they only want gold or silver, because that might be what they reach out to worldwide. And in that case, if that happens, that means all of the value of everything. And I know this is hard to get your head around too. It's hard to wrap your mind around this sort of thing. But all of the value of everything, the goods, the land, the work, the labor, the people, everything can get transferred into gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies. And being as the silver market, a small market, Bitcoin and Litecoin markets are terribly small, and all these markets are terribly small. Even the gold market's small in comparison to the entire world. These asset classes could explode in value hundreds of times over what they're worth right now. And if you step outside your front yard and you look at your friends and your neighbors all up and down the street, they've all got their money in the bank, and it's all in dollars, and they don't really own anything much because their car's generally leased, and their house has got a mortgage, and they've got their credit cards half full, and what are they going to do? Now, you might have a little bit of gold and silver or a little bit of cryptocurrency, and these things might explode in value. It might allow you to live your life, where your friends and neighbors, this situation might put them in a place where they don't have a life anymore. Because when the crisis hits, they might lose their job, right? They won't be able to make their payments on their car, and so in the middle of the night while they're sleeping, a repossession company will come in and take the car, and those guys are so slick at that, They come in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and don't make a sound. They roll the car down the street or pick it up onto a machine that's so quiet, and they wake up the next morning, the car's gone. And then a week later, a guy comes and puts a notice on their door. It says eviction notice on their door of their house. This house is being foreclosed by the bank or whatever, and they've lost their job. And then they run to their bank for safety because they got a bank account. And the bank locks its doors because the crisis is on, puts a chain around the doors, and they say you're going to have to use the debit machine in the lobby, And so they go in the lobby behind a line is stretched down the street in the hot sun for a quarter of a mile. Everybody's in the same boat, And so they finally get up to the ATM machine, and go to withdraw their money. And they say, well, you got to come back tomorrow because we're going to have to refill it. They come back the next day, and there's still no money in there because they didn't refill it. And the guy says, well, it's going to be another week before we refill the machine, and you'll have to get in here quick, sort of thing. And they can't get their money. And so what was once a normal person that had a normal job and had a leased car, nearly new car, and had a nice house, now they got nothing and they're sitting on the curb. And the police comes along and says, you can't sit there. Let me see your ID. You can't sit there. You're going to have to move. Or we're going to take you in. And this is the kind of world we're heading into. This is why you need gold and silver. So that when that time comes, you can pay your mortgage on your home, and you can pay for your leased car and so on, so you can maintain your lifestyle, And maybe you might have to cut back a little bit because you might lose your job too, just like your neighbors do. But you might have to fall back on your gold and silver in order to maintain a certain amount of lifestyle. I mean, you might have to even cut back, but at least you'll have a warm bed to sleep in. You'll have a house to sleep in. You won't be sitting on the curb like your neighbor because you're not relying upon this banking system, this corrupt banking system that we have right now, that they're basically this is the reason why the fiat monetary system's going to go down in flames. And this is what's going to boost gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies into this status. Because if they had been corrupt, if they had to run the fiat monetary system properly, you know, and there had been almost no inflation. In fact, a little bit of deflation is actually good. It means you can purchase more. If they had have been good custodians of this system. But they're not. They're a bunch of corrupt crooks. And they've taken advantage of the system to the point now, they've robbed it, to the point now where it's basically ready to collapse. And it's going to collapse. It's ready, it's set to collapse, and it's going to collapse. And so that's where we stand. And so you don't have many alternatives to actually get out of this banking system. Your friends and neighbors aren't going to. They're not going to heed the warning. They're going to stay in until they get caught and trapped. And they're not going to be able to get out in time, and they're going to be sitting on the curb. You know? You don't want that to happen to you. You got to think ahead for you, for the safety of yourself and your family. Because ultimately, these people that are sitting on the curb are going to end up going someplace. I mean, they will end up going someplace, but that someplace they go to might not be all that good. I mean, I can see a future where there'll be whole new cities established of homeless people. And basically like camps. And there's just not enough services to go around to cover all this. If you've got a Chicago, and then right next door you've got a New Chicago, and New Chicago is bigger than Chicago, and it's all homeless people, you know, and I mean, the people that provide services anyway, doctors, paramedics, and so on, they might not even want to go into these areas, and it might not even be safe for them to go into these areas that are all homeless people. It might get to a point where the homeless cities become so big and so dangerous that they put a big fence around it, and they just basically let whatever happens in there happen in there. And I've done shows about this, you know, where there might be a situation coming in the United States where maybe the largest of these homeless cities might have actually millions of people in them. And there might be hundreds of thousands more people moving in every month, but the population's decreasing. Because there's a lot of disease out there in this world that can make a comeback. You know, things like diseases like chickenpox and diseases like tuberculosis, and then there's waterborne diseases, you know, where people, if they live and they don't have good sanitation, and there's just a common ordinary flu, which in certain circumstances, now, we're not used to the flu usually being deadly, because what happens is we catch the flu, we go into a nice warm place in our house, you know, and we drink lots of fluids, and we take care of ourselves properly. But can you imagine if you're thrust into a homeless community, maybe New Chicago, and all you have for your house is something that's put together with pieces of plastic that you've scavenged, and maybe an old tarpaulin for the roof, and inside you might not have anything for heat even. And, you know, maybe it's wintertime, you catch the flu, you know, and you get a chill, you know. I mean, you don't want to go to these homeless camps. This is why it's so important you have your gold, your silver, and your cryptocurrencies for when this time comes. And your friends and neighbors, that's where they're going to be going. Because when all these bubbles pop, and we go into a hyperinflationary depression because they try to prop up these asset bubbles again with just printing money, you know, that's when the dollar's going to start losing value. And as the dollar loses value, these people are going to start going behind. They're going to start going behind because their salaries are not going to keep up. Rent's going to go up. Food prices are going to go up. Everything's going to go up. Everything's going to double, triple, quadruple in price. And your dollars just ain't going to be able to cut it anymore. Your working is almost going to be like a nonsense. Just because you got a job even. It's going to be like nonsense. Because your salary just ain't going to cut it. It ain't going to... You'll have a choice to make. Do I feed myself with my salary or do I pay my rent with my salary? And this is how these people are going to end up in these homeless situations, even though they're working. An awful lot of these people that are going to end up homeless in the future are going to be still working and have a job while they're homeless. They'll be going from the homeless camp into the city with a bicycle. We're heading into a crazy future. And it's going to happen not real fast, semi-fast, but people are going to adjust. There's another thing about the human nature, the human spirit, the human nature, is they're able to adjust to new situations very rapidly. So that's what's going to happen. People are going to adjust to this new situation or the new paradigm that the world finds itself in. And I see an increase in homelessness of at least 10 times what it is now, but I'm probably extremely underestimating it. It's probably going to be more like 100 times more homeless people than there are now. Probably going to be like 50% of the population is homeless. This is the situation that the central banks have put us in. It's unbelievable how we can just watch it happen, actually know what it's all about. A lot of us know what they're doing, but we just sit here. And it happens. It just happens because they're basically doing whatever they want to do. And the people are the ones that at a certain point are going to get trapped. It's like a frog being slowly in that water, and it feels so nice, that nice warm water. He doesn't realize what's going to happen, and it's going to happen pretty quick when it does finally happen. And that's the way with all these people out there who are living their everyday lives, and they're speeding up. You ever noticed them a little bit? They're speeding up. They're a little bit more impatient now because they got to make a little bit more money to try to keep up, because they're already feeling the effects a little bit. But they just figure, well, I'll just work a little bit harder. Work a little bit harder, make a little bit more money, and then I'll be able to keep up with the way I was 2 years ago. And they still see themselves slipping backwards. Listen, thank you guys for listening. I know it's been kind of a long show. I've rambled on a little bit, but a lot of this stuff has to be said, you know. I mean, we have to consider some of these things, because we're moving into this uncertain future very quickly. Bye-bye, guys.